What's going on, y'all? It's Bodyworks here. We're back with another UFC4 tutorial, and today we are going to be talking all about defending joint submissions. This is just something that I've noticed that people don't really know how to do in this game, or at least a lot of people don't. They're like really bad at defending joint submissions, and that's like an easy win. Because if you have no clue how to defend a joint submission in this game, you pretty much lose every time someone even tries a joint submission. Or at least that's what I've noticed when I go up against opponents who don't know how to defend joint submissions. So with that being said, let's get right into it. So the first thing you want to ask yourself is, how do you submit someone in this game? Well, it's pretty simple. If you're on offense, you want to have your bar inside your opponent's bar, and if you're on defense, you want to keep your bar away from your opponent. So Dosanjos, the one who's getting submitted right now, his bar is the blue one, and the one going for the submission is Tony Ferguson. So as you can see, putting my bar inside of his advances the submission gets me closer to that submission. And although that sounds really simple, usually it's not. One of you is trying to submit, one of you is trying to escape, so obviously it's not going to be super easy. So if you are on defense, obviously you're going to be moving your bar, trying to get away from your opponents. And when you're trying to escape a submission in this game, rapid movement of your bar actually makes your bar bigger. And when you're on defense, of course, you don't want your bar to be big, you want it to be small, so that way your opponent has less room to get his bar inside of yours. So if I move my bar very fast and rapidly while I'm on defense, it makes it a whole lot bigger. As you can see, I'm just going left trigger, right trigger, very rapid changes. I'm not being smooth with it at all. So if my opponent wants, he can literally just sit in the middle, and he's getting closer to that submission because I'm not moving my bar smoothly. So again, instead of holding in the left trigger, then letting go of that fully, and then holding in the right trigger, I know I've said that a lot, but I just want to reinforce that's not what you want to do. So instead of doing that, what you want to do is just, if you're all the way on the left side, you want to just slowly let out the left trigger and then slowly put on the right trigger. It's just a nice little rhythm. Slowly let go of the right trigger, slowly put on the left trigger. And as you can see, that made my bar a lot smaller. Even though it moves a little bit slower, it's not super huge and easy to submit if I'm going left trigger fully and then right trigger fully. You could also, and you don't always have to go from side to side, you could go back in, you could kind of go towards the middle and then back to one side, or you could just sit there. Oftentimes, if you just sit in the corner for a little bit, your opponent will be predicting you to go back towards the middle or the other direction, so then you can kind of juke them out in a weird way. The second tip I have for submission defense, and this goes for joint submissions, this goes for choke submissions as well, is manage your stamina. When you're trying to defend a submission and your stamina is low, it's a lot harder to defend the submission. Basically, you have a much higher chance of being submitted. Now in UFC3, if you had low stamina and you were trying to get submitted, your gait would just simply move way slower. But in this game, it's a little bit different. So if I get RDA's stamina really low here, and then go for a leg lock with Tony, as you can see, when I'm trying to defend with RDA, the bar goes back to small way slower. Right before, if I went really far to the right or really far to the left, the bar would come back pretty quick. But now the bar shrinks so much slower. So your bar is bigger for longer, basically, when you're defending with low stamina. And of course, when you're on defense, you don't want your bar to be big, you want it to be small, so that way it's harder for your opponent to submit you. Not to mention that when one person is low on stamina, the other person's transitions are going to go much faster. So for example, if I'm Tony, look at how long it takes for this leg lock animation to play. Look how long it takes for that leg lock transition to go. So an example of this is, I want you to watch how long this transition takes with Tony Ferguson if I go for a leg lock. Obviously that took quite a while, it's a pretty slow transition. But if RDA is really low on stamina, that transition plays super fast. So if you are low on stamina, it's not only easier for your opponent to submit you, but it's also easier for them to start the submission, to start that transition into the submission. So really, if you are low on stamina on the ground, you're just putting yourself in a bad position to be submitted. Conversely, if you're the one pursuing the submission, try to deny your opponent's transitions, work their body earlier in the fight as well to get their stamina lower, and once their stamina is low, that's when you should go for the submission. And another tip I have for you guys is looking for chains in this game. So what that means is, when you are pursuing a submission, there will be prompts for buttons that pop up on the screen that will let you chain a submission or let you strike your opponent during a submission, or if you're the one getting submitted sometimes, and for certain submissions, you can counter your opponent and get out of that submission and counter with your own submission. But for example, if RDA goes for an armbar and I'm Tony Ferguson, right? Obviously, I don't want to get submitted. So I would try to escape, but this is just for educational purposes right here. Now I can go for the slam. As you see, when the circle popped up on the screen, that will do a little bit of damage, but most importantly, it will instantly get you out of the submission. So if you're in a bad spot, say you're low on stamina and your opponent's trying to submit you, sometimes your best bet to get out of that submission and not get submitted is using the slam or whatever prompt pops up. So if I am RDA, if I am the one pursuing the submission, if I tap the button that pops up on the screen for Tony before Tony presses it, right? So I just press that with RDA, then that button just completely goes away and Tony can no longer do it. So if you're trying to submit someone, keep that in mind. Another example of this is the triangle choke. So first off, right away, you can strike the person who's actually trying to submit you, which will further boost your escape meter and get you closer. But you can also deny that chain. As you can see right there, the chain prompt popped up, and I hit it with Tony Ferguson before RDA hit it. So that completely denies RDA. When you chain a submission as the guy on offense, that not only takes it to a new submission, but it also boosts your submission meter and gets you closer to submitting your opponent. So if I'm on defense and I hit the chain button before my opponent does, that's really good for me because then he won't be able to chain it and get closer to submitting. And just to show you guys what it looks like when you chain a submission, I'm using RDA right now. And when that chain prompt pops up, I want you to look at the submission meter. I want you to look at as to how much it boosted. So I chain it to an armbar, and it instantly adds progress to my submission meter. So I'm already closer to submitting my opponent just because of that one little input. Now the easiest way to defend yourself from joint submissions in the first place, or just submissions in general, is to deny the transition, so that way the submission can't even happen. You're stopping it, you're nipping the submission in the bud. So I'm going to go through some common submissions and how you can deny them. So the first one is the guillotine. Obviously you hold R2 and flick up on the right stick to deny that. The triangle, which you'd hold R2 and right. The tricky thing on the triangle choke is that you don't always flick the stick in the same direction every time. You flick it in whatever way your opponent's knees are pointing. So if you look at RDA's knees and I go for the triangle, his knees are pointing to the left, so that's the way I'm going to flick the stick. Lastly is the armbar, which you flick down. Now if you were in half guard top and you were playing a good jiu-jitsu character like RDA, he might have the Kimura from half guard bottom. So if he goes to the right side, I'd hold R2 and flick the right stick to the right. And if you are in side control bottom, a very common submission for your opponent to have is a Kimura from side control top. So if I'm RDA and I want to deny that Kimura attempt, I hold R2 and flick the way that he is grabbing my arm. So if he's grabbing my left arm, I'm going to flick the stick to the left. And lastly, we have the rolling knee bar from bottom backside. So to deny this, you're just going to hold the right. So to deny this, you're just going to hold R2 and then flick up on the right stick. The way you can tell your opponent's going for this knee bar is that he's going to try to put his inside leg in between your two legs, like that. This transition takes a pretty long time to play out, so you can get it pretty easily. But that's pretty much all I have for you guys this video. I hope these tips helped you out, helped make you a better player at the game, or you at least learned something. If you like these type of videos, I make UFC4 tutorials, gameplay, showcases, all that good stuff, about 4 times a week. That's my upload goal. So yeah, if you like this content, please consider hitting subscribe, but most importantly, thank you for watching and have a good day.